Hello viewers, I am Sumit, Assistant Professor of Mallahu Ministry of Technology of Department Mechanical Engineering. Now in this presentation I will represent about the basic introduction of casting processes. In introduction of casting processes, casting is a manufacturing process by which molten metal such as metal or plastic is introduced in the mold, then allowed to solidify within the mold and then ejected or broken out to make a fabricated part. Casting is used for making parts of complex shape that would be difficult or uneconomical to make by other methods such as cutting from the solid material. Casting may be used to form hot liquid metal or meltable plastic like thermoplastics or various material that cold set after mixing of components such as certain plastic resins such as epoxy and water setting materials. Here the fundamentals of the casting. There are the basic 6 factors involved in the casting processes. First of all, molding cavity or mold cavity, melting process, pouring techniques, solidification process, part removal process and post processing. Here the casting terms that are basically used in the casting processes, first of all, pattern, flask, scope, drag, core box, core print and mold cavity. In this flow diagram showing all the different types of components in the casting that is used. First of all, the pouring basin. Here the molten metal is poured, then it go through the sprue and come in front of gate. Here the gating system is it will be discussed later. In gating system, and through this gate the molten metal go through and come in the pattern. Here riser is used to compensate the solidification sinkage. This riser basically compensate the liquid sinkage. And the another parts, they are cope, drags and lug, pin, all are used. Now the gating system. As I said earlier, gating system is very much important because in the gating system pressure is continue in the pattern, pressure of the molten metal. Here the first of all pouring basin or pouring cup, then it go through the sprue and then go through the runner, then come to the gate. And riser is also used in a gating system because riser that compensate the liquid sinkage. Now steps in the casting. First of all, drag portion of the pattern is placed in the flask. The diagram to the left shows the pattern of the flat board and a casting box called a drag being placed over it. Secondly, drag is packed with sand. Special casting sand will be packed around the pattern to ensure the easy removal of the pattern from the sand. Parting powder is sprinkled over the and around the pattern. Parting powder is similar to the talcum powder. It stops the casting sands sticking to the pattern and pulling away with it when the pattern is finally removed from the sand. Now drag is packed with the sand. Casting sand is then shaken through a sieve. Only fine particle fall around the pattern. This is called the facing sand and it must be fine so the detail on the pattern shows up on the final casting. Now packing of the sand with ram. The drag is then packed with more casting sand. It is a good idea to sieve all the sand being placed above the pattern, then ram it down firmly using a ramming tool. This tool has two ends, one is cylindrical and another is pointed. In cylindrical tool used for general packing down of the sand and in pointed ends used for packing sand close up to the pattern. Now leveling. When the drag is placed packed fully it a level of called the stickle of using a straight steel bar. Turn over the drag. The entire drag and it contents are then turned over so that the base of the pattern can be seen. Fixing and positioning of the locating pin. A top box called a cope is then placed on a top of the drag and locating pins are put in the position so that the casting boxes cannot be moved sideways. Now insert sprue and riser. Sprue pin are positioned, one usually on the back of the pattern and other to the side. This will eventually provide the entrance and exit for the molten metal when it is poured into the sand. The sand is packed or rammed into the cope in same way as the drag. Parting powder is first applied followed by the facing sand. The sprue pin should be taller than the boxes and stand out from the stand when it is leveled with the stickling bar. Now pack the cope with sand. Small depressions are dug into the sand at the top of the two sprue pins. These are useful when the molten metal is poured. The depressions are called the pouring basin and feeder. Now removal of the pattern. The pattern is removed using a spike or draw spike. The end of the spike can be threaded and so it can be screwed into the softwood pattern. Before removing the pattern, it is good idea to gently tap the spike so that it loosens the pattern from the sand. It can then be lifted away from the casting box. Now pouring of the molten metal. Now molten metal is poured into with a great care. The metal is poured down the hole left by the first sprue pin, now called the runner. As it runs down the runner, it flows through the gate cut by the trowel into the cavity left by the pattern. As up the riser, the hole left by the second sprue pin, the casting should be left for sufficient time before removal from the sand. Here the final casting. When removed from the sand, the runner and riser are cut away and the casting is ready for machining. Here is the flow diagram of the basic casting process as I earlier discussed. Here is the different type of processes, go through one by one. Now thank you for viewing this presentation.